Hello everyone. Today we're going to learn about PROC summary. Let's have a look at its definition. It produces the descriptive statistical summary for supplied data. Now, if you are following the SAS videos in this series, then you might have learned about PROC means. So PROC means and PROC summary by now are almost equal, but there is one distinction which I will be explaining in the video. So that will be PROC summary versus PROC means, which I will be explaining as we progress in the video. First we're going to start with PROC summary. Let's jump to the SAS window and try to understand this with the help of an example. Alright, so here we are in SAS window, and before I proceed further, let me show you a look of our input data which I will be using throughout this video, okay, which is nothing but our usual one, which is cars data. Alright, and then I'm just going to run this, and for sample I'm going to just take 10 observation to show it to you, nothing, not all. Okay, so let's execute this. So here is how the data is going to look like. If you want to have a bigger view, you can just have a look on this. So throughout the video we're going to use the variables like make and the horsepower and some more if required. Okay, then moving forward, let's create a simple PROC summary report. Okay, so let's create PROC summary, and then we're gonna say data equals to SAS help, and then we're gonna use cars data, and then we're gonna run. What do you think? Is this going to give the output? Because this is how all the procedures work. So let's try if this is going to work. No, it just gave us the output result error. Output error, we can say, right? So here it is saying that neither the print option nor a valid output statement has been given. So what does that mean? PROC summary by default doesn't print the output. So for that, we're going to use the output statement, and then we're going to say output this data in testing table. So we are going to create a new table, and in that we're going to produce the result. All right, now here we have the result produced. So here it says nothing but simply that in your entire data set there is just 428 records, because we are not asking to provide other information. So this is one distinction. When you use PROC means, then it by default gives you the descriptive statistical summary, but when you use PROC summary, it only tells you, by default it only tells you the frequency. This is one of the difference. You can take a note of it. Moving forward, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the var statement over here. In var statement we provide the numerical variable basis on which we want to perform the statistical operation. So here we're gonna use the numerical variable which is horsepower. All right, so let's try to run this particular thing and see what the data comes in. Wow, so here we have this particular data sets created. So if you see, it has these many columns. Let's try to understand each of these columns in detail. So here if you see, this is the table which we have, and let's have a look at this column. So this column is nothing but the name of descriptive statistics which has been produced. So you see here n represents to number of records in the supplied data. Mean is the minimum in this particular variable, right? So minimum horsepower is 73, maximum horsepower is 500, average horsepower is 215, and the standard deviation of horsepower is 71.836. Now what standard deviation means, if you want to understand, I have provided the link in the description section. Just click that and check that out. Other than this, you see this variable, this is frequency variable. It is nothing but just simply shows you the number of rows used in descriptive statistics calculation. So whatever calculation we have done over here, how many records have been used into this, it is that. Now this type statement is nothing but it simply says, it identifies a specific combination of class variables to use to subdivide the data. All right, now let me give you an example. Let me try to explain frequency and type with the help of an example. Let's jump to this thing first. All right, so here we are back in SAS, and now what we're gonna do is, so here we just saw the output here we have the result on entire data set. Now what if we want to segment this basis on a category? Let's say I want to segment this basis on make. So for that you're going to use class statement. You can also use the by variable, but that has certain limitation in terms of type column. Okay, so here, not to make it too complicated, I'm going to use class statement. Okay, and in that we're going to use make variable. Don't get confused, make is a column available in cars dataset. Okay, now I'm just going to run this, and whatever output comes in I will be printing that. Okay, so I'm going to say proc print data equals to testing, and then simply run. So I'm printing this, it looks much better. Okay, that is the only reason because of which I'm printing this data. Okay, so now if you see over here, this is the output which we get. Now if you see, there is a difference in the values of type and frequency. Let's understand what does this actually mean. Okay, so here if you see, this data has two segments. This is the upper segment and this is the lower segment. Upper segment, if you see here, the type value is 0 and in frequency you see 428. Now you, from the previous example you saw the table had total number of records 420, and this 0 means this descriptive statistics are calculated on whole data sets. So 0 represents to the whole data sets, right? And that is proved with the help of frequency value. Okay, so this segment simply shows, the upper segment simply shows the whole data set and lower segment specifies this. So the difference between these two segments are basis on type and frequency. So if you see over here, this one is the whole data set and this one is the specific to categories. So like I said, 0 represents that these calculations are on whole data set, and any value other than 0 in type just simply represents to the specific combination. For example, if you see over here, the values are 1 in type column, and here if you see the values are 7. What does this mean? This means is Acura make has 7 records in the supplied data, and this descriptive statistical summary is for Acura only. Now if you see over here, it is 19. That means for Audi we have 19 rows in the data, right? If you see, the frequency is 19, we have 19 records in the data. You don't trust me? Let me show it to you in the data itself. So for example, we're gonna check about Audi. Right now if you see, how many records do we have? You see 19 records we have. So this is how you, now you see I was not lying, this is, I was right, so hence proved I was right. Okay, now coming back over here, so I hope this frequency column is clear to you. Now coming back to the type statement, so type statement is quite subjective, or we can say this is quite broader thing in itself. If you want to understand this thing in detail, just write that into the comment section, and if I get at least 20 comments which says explain about type, I'm going to make another video in very detail. There is already one video, but that is for proc means, and you might face some sound facility, though I'll give the link into the description section. Check that out if that helps you. Otherwise just comment that make a video on type, I will make a video on type. Now let's see some more example with proc summary. So here if we again come back over here, now this, hope this was pretty clear to you. Okay, now what happens is, if you see, by default it is producing 6 statistical summary, or in fact we can say that's the 5 statistical summary, not 6. 1 2 3 4 5 statistical summary. N is simply number of records and so on. Okay, now if you don't want to see all those, then what you can do is you can simply provide the specific statistical summary which you actually interested in seeing. For example, I want to see only minimum value, so you can say mean, and then I want to see the maximum value, I want to see sum of the values. Okay, so that those all things you can provide over here. Other than that, you can also give a column name in which you want to populate the sum, like total horsepower, HP. I'm going to say HP to the horsepower. and then I can say max HP, then I can say mean HP. And remember, you don't have to put a comma, just separate it within space. Okay, now let's run this. Now if you see over here, the columns are renamed and you don't see that stat column appearing over here, right? So that by default produces 5 descriptive statistical summary, but now here you see it is specific to those which you have specified. Okay, hope this is pretty clear to you. Now I promise that I will be showing you the differences between proc summary and proc mean. So one difference I explained you in the beginning. Now over here I'm going to show you another difference. Okay, so let's try to run proc means first. Okay, proc means data equals to SAS help dot cars, and then run this. And then also, okay, let's first check this out. So when you run this, what happens? It produces the output, and in output you see all this statistical summary, even though you are not specifying any class or anything else. Okay, but if you run a proc summary, and you say data SAS help dot cars, sorry, and then you run this, what's gonna happen? If you remember, then in starting of the video we tried this and it just gave us an error, because in proc summary we have to specify the output statement, right? So for that we're gonna say output out and data set name in which we want to produce the output, and that we're gonna say test, right? So here it produced the output, but here it only says the frequency. So this is the second difference between proc means and proc summary. Proc means produces the prints the output, but proc summary asks you to provide how you want to produce the output. What does that mean? So here we just produce the output in a separate table. Now does this mean that we cannot print proc summary ever and we cannot store the output from proc means in a table? No, the answer is no, nothing is impossible. So let's try over here. Okay, so if we want to produce output of proc means in a table, that can also be done. So for that you're gonna simply say this statement, you're gonna simply provide this statement, and when you do this, it is producing the output in a separate table. Right, now what does that mean? Can we not by default can we not print these proc summary? That you can also do. For that you can simply say print and just run this. So here you see this is produced. Now when there is one distinction when you are using print statement in proc summary, and for example you are specifying a variable in, or what we can say is variable name horsepower. If you are providing any variable in var statement over here, and if you want to see some specific statistics, then over here you can simply provide that mean, and let's see the output. How interesting does it look? You see it simply says minimum, maximum, etc. Okay, so this is interesting, isn't it? So I just hope that you understood it. If yes, then give a thumbs up. If no, then write that into the comment section. Write your doubts into the comment section. I'll definitely try to solve that. Until then, happy learning, all the very best.